Everyone gives Uncle Iroh credit for raising Zuko, and that's for a good reason. He did turn the prince into an honorable man. But who was the woman behind the scenes that gave Zuko a second chance at life? Everyone talks about Iroh, but no one really goes into depth about the massive role Zuko's mom, Ursa, had in his life, or the massive sacrifice she made to save Zuko from his own family. The creators of Avatar didn't spend much time reviewing Ursa's storyline in the show, but that may have been for the better, because what happened to her was absolutely devastating. Before she belonged to the Fire Nation's royal family, Ursa actually lived in the small Fire Nation town of Hira, that is, until the Fire Lord came and made a special request. And as you might know, when it came to decisions or requests made by the Fire Lord's family, someone like Ursa had very little say. Ursa was the daughter of the local magistrate of the town, and had no connection to Fire Lord Ozai according to Avatar: The Last Airbender: The Search, a graphic novel by Jean Luen Yang. Don't get this idea twisted though. Ursa still came from a very powerful line of firebenders. She was Avatar Roku's granddaughter after all. In Ursa's case though, she didn't have any firebending abilities, and you'd think that would matter to someone like the Fire Lord, who at the time was Fire Lord Aslan, but it didn't. All he cared about was the bloodline, which spelled tragedy for Ursa. According to The Search, Ursa used to be happy, as she lived a quiet life as a stage actor. She was even betrothed to a young man from her town named Ikem. Ursa didn't realize though that her life was about to drastically change, and not for the better. At that time, the current Fire Lord Aslan had been searching for Roku's descendants, and tragically for them, he eventually found them in Hira. He brought company with him though in the form of his son Ozai, whom he promptly introduced to Ursa. And after hearing the Fire Sages explain to Aslan that if his son were to marry and have children with Roku's granddaughter, they would be blessed with very powerful children, he practically made it happen. Thanks a lot for that, buddy. Aslan made Ursa an offer that she couldn't refuse and basically forced her to agree to marry his son Ozai. And just like that, Ursa was forced to leave her family and her fiancé Ikem behind and start her new life as a Fire Nation princess. Under duress, Ursa married Prince Ozai, and in turn, she swore her undying fealty to the Fire Nation. And it wasn't long after the two were married that Ursa had not one, but two powerful children, Prince Zuko and Princess Azula. You might be familiar with them, but as much as she loved her children, Ursa would soon learn that being a loving mother wasn't enough to save herself from the tragic fate that still awaited her. But what was it about her relationship with Ozai that made it so toxic to begin with? Well, Ursa and Ozai were drastically different parents, and they each wanted very different lives for their children, as you could probably tell from the few times we saw them in flashbacks. But what you might not know is that Jean's novel goes into that even further. While Ozai wanted his children to be powerful firebenders who could rule the Fire Nation with a flaming fist, Ursa simply wanted her children to be happy and kind. Sorry lady, this is the Fire Nation. We don't do that here. Ursa tried her best to give Azula and Zuko a happy childhood, and in both the show and the graphic novel, she made a point to spend as much time with them as she could. That's why they would go on vacations all the time to Ember Island, which was mentioned in the 5th episode of Book 3, The Beach. Ursa always preached kindness to her children, and that was something that Zuko picked up on quickly. Azula, though, not so much. To be fair though, Zuko definitely wasn't a saint throughout the show, but despite his rage and aggression throughout the series, he was always shown to be calm and relatively nice whenever they flashed back to him as a kid. And on the other hand, like I said, Azula was always kind of like a little devil. Lucky for Zuko though, whenever Ursa caught Azula picking on her brother, she always stepped in and would scold her for being rude. Like in the flashback scene where Azula was talking about how weak Fire Lord Aslan was and that he would be usurped soon. Ursa sternly told her that she shouldn't speak like that, and then under her breath muttered, "What is wrong with that child?" as Azula walked away. To be fair, I think we've all said that. Being rude clearly wouldn't fly around Ursa, but her devotion to being good wouldn't be enough to save her from the tragic fate that awaited her. Ozai was the opposite when it came to parenting. He really didn't parent. All he wanted was for his children to be strong so that they could one day rule like he planned to. All he cared about was their firebending prowess, and as you know, Azula shined. In the series, she was depicted as a sort of prodigy from a young age, and she quickly upstaged her brother Zuko, who wasn't the most adept at firebending. And as was Ozai's way of parenting, he certainly let Zuko know that he was letting the family down and that he was weak. I mean, according to Zuko, Ozai used to tell him that Azula was born lucky, meanwhile Zuko himself was simply lucky to be born. Now, that's a burn that would hurt more than anything that Ozai would end up doing to Zuko's face. Like, Zuko definitely needed some ice for that. As you know though, Ozai's poor parenting techniques weren't the worst fate that would befall Ursa and her family. There was still much more to come. So, how did Ursa manage to endure such a toxic relationship for so long? It's because of her wonderful memories of Hira, and because no matter how much Ursa spent with her family in the capital, she still tried her best to stay in contact with her hometown. The graphic novel showed that she had been writing letters to her family that she gave to a woman named Elua, whom she trusted to bring them back to her hometown. However, none of the letters even made it out of the capital. It turned out that Ozai had more sway over Elua, so instead of delivering the letters, she simply took them from Ursa and locked them away. But there was one letter that held information that was far too important not to be handled immediately. According to Ursa, Zuko wasn't actually Ozai's son. Apparently, he was actually Ikkum's child. Once Ozai found out about this, he quickly contacted the Yuyan archers and hired them to track down Ikkum and kill him. But after months of searching, the Yuyan couldn't find Ikkum and eventually believed that he had either died or fled. Ozai accepted that Ikkum was dead, but it's unclear if he actually believed that or not. That being said, he had more important matters to deal with, and that meant bad things ahead for Ursa. But what could the Fire Lord possibly do that would make Ursa's life any worse than it already was? You see, at this point in time, Ozai was becoming more and more impatient with his father and felt that he deserved to be the next Fire Lord instead of his older brother Iroh. But when he brought it up to Aslan, Fire Lord Aslan claimed that he should be punished for the disrespect that Ozai showed. And according to Azula, who overheard the entire conversation, the Fire Lord was threatening to have Zuko killed so that Ozai could learn what it was like to lose a son, just as Iroh did. Azula used this information to taunt Zuko, not knowing that their mother was on her way to save the day. Ursa confronted her daughter about what she overheard, and when Azula explained that Zuko's life was at stake, Ursa knew she needed to do something. Ursa met with her husband and offered him a chance to become the next Fire Lord. In exchange for Zuko's life, she would help Ozai assassinate his father and take the throne for himself. And as you would expect, Ozai accepted with only one other condition. After the death of Fire Lord Aslan, Ozai demanded that Ursa be banished from the capital and sent away from her family. This was a fate that would hurt Ursa more than anything else, but she knew that it was the only way to ensure that Zuko survived. So she accepted the terms, and sure enough, the pair managed to kill Fire Lord Aslan and pass the crown onto the head of Ozai. And that was the last time that Prince Zuko saw his mother, at least during his adolescence. So what was he supposed to do now? Just give up? Not a chance. And so fast forward to the end of Avatar: The Last Airbender, after Zuko had finally become the leader of the Fire Nation, he was finally in a position to find out what happened to his mom, and Fire Lord Zuko approached his father, who was now powerless after Avatar Aang took away his bending powers. And he asked him what became of Ursa, but he couldn't get an earnest answer out of Ozai, which caused Zuko to resort to the only other person he could think of that might be able to help him, his sister. And according to the search, this led to Azula actually joining Zuko on a journey to find their mother, though I wouldn't say they were party members and they definitely weren't any closer as siblings. Their journey together took them to their mother's hometown, Hira, and by them, I mean every member of Team Avatar minus Toph. Aang, Katara, and Sokka all joined Zuko on his mission to find his mother, and once they were in Hira, they found out just how close they really were. After Zuko started asking strangers in town about Ursa, the team ran into a man named Norrin, who felt a sort of familiarity with the new Fire Lord. Norrin invited Team Avatar back to his home, where they met with his wife Noriko. The family explained that they had heard of Ursa and that she may have been where Ikkum was last seen in the Forgetful Valley. After Zuko and his friends journeyed to the valley, they met a spirit known as the Mother of Faces. The spirit explained that she had seen Ursa and that Zuko's mother came to her requesting a new face with new memories. That's when it was revealed that the team had already met Ursa, only now she was going by the name Noriko. Zuko quickly returned to Hira, and through a violent series of events that were kicked off by Azula, of course, the Mother of Faces revealed itself once again. The spirit showed up in Hira and offered Noriko the chance to get back to her life as Ursa and regain all of her memories. And she accepted. At that moment, Noriko ceased to exist and she became Ursa once again. Reunited with her son, Ursa let Zuko know how proud she was of him and all that he accomplished. She thanked him for finding her, and when he asked about his real father, she told him that she lied about Ikkum in the letter because she knew that Ozai would react to it. In other words, Zuko was the true heir of the Fire Nation, despite how much he questioned it when he heard about Ikkum possibly being his father. Ursa and her new family were brought back to the Fire Nation capital, where they would live out the rest of their lives as one big family with Fire Lord Zuko. The only thing left to wonder is, what do you think Zuko's life was like after he finally reunited with Ursa? Did she move back into the capital of the Fire Nation to live with her family? Well, be sure to let me know what you think happened in the comments below. I look forward to reading all of them.